Welcome to episode 20 of the Formidable Genealogist Studio, and I am joined again by friend and colleague Aimee Rose Haynes. And we're going to talk a little bit about applications for Native American ancestry to join a tribe, and she's going to give you some pointers on that. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, Aimee?
Hey everybody, my name is Aimee Rose Haynes and thank you so much. I am a Cherokee Nation citizen, and so I've kind of made it my little side mission to find all of our lost cousins and get them enrolled into whatever tribe they belong to if it's possible. And me being a Cherokee Nation citizen, I've become very expert-ish on the Cherokee records and where to find all of them because there are so many. And of course, that enrollment process can be overwhelming for some people because they don't know where to start and what they need and how to gather all of those documents because it literally you have to have all of these things in place before you can apply. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those records, what you need, and how to apply. And I'm available for research. So if you think you might be Cherokee or any other tribe, I'm happy to help you try to navigate all of that. And if you have proven that you are and you don't know how to navigate those applications, I can help you with that also. If you're just trying to start out and you have that family story, I have a research guide on my website, aimeerosehaynes.com, and it is navigating the five civilized tribes, all of those crazy records that you may not be aware of, and also that enrollment process on the criteria because each tribe has its own criteria to register, and it's completely different based on tribe, whatever tribe you're going to. And like I said, I'm available for research if you need help with that.
Cool. So, how do people start this research? You have this family story. Where do you recommend that they dig in?
You have to start with your family tree. Like, start with what you know. Don't start with what you've heard or what has been passed down through the line. Start with what you know. You know who you are. You have a birth certificate. You know who your parents are. They're listed. You probably know who their parents are. And if you don't, you can search birth and death records, obituaries to find that information. And same with your great grandparents. For the Cherokee tribe in specific, you're looking for a time period for enrollment purposes of the early 1900s. So 1898, 1899, 1900, up to about 1907-ish. That's the key time period that you're looking for. So you're going to want to start with yourself and work yourself backwards until you get to an ancestor that would have been born around that chunk of time. Because that's the record that you're going to need to enroll into the Cherokee tribe, Cherokee Nation specifically. So that is where you're going to want to go. And once you do that and you have those ancestors, look where they're living. If they're living in Oklahoma, you have one point in the right direction to continue your research for those Cherokee records. But if they lived in like somewhere, say Washington State or Ohio, somewhere at that time period, you probably are not Cherokee. You'll need to focus your research on maybe a different tribe to see if that story, that family lore is going to check out. Once you get to that ancestor, that specific name in that time period, you're going to want to look at the Dawes Roll. You're going to want to see if that ancestor is on the Dawes Roll for that time period. If we're talking maybe your family was in North Carolina around that time period, then you're going to look a little bit differently. Instead of the Dawes Roll, you're going to maybe look at the Baker Roll, see if they were there, and you're going to look for around 1924-ish. That little time period around 1924 is where you're going to look for your ancestors. You don't have to go back as far back. So that would be where I would recommend to start. If you found your ancestor on one of those two records, then you are on your way to enrollment. You've already did the hardest part. You've already proven that your ancestor is on that roll. I will caveat this. There are a lot of people with the same name, similar ages, same locations, same area of maybe the state. So be very cautious when you are looking at those records and verify, say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is my ancestor." Look at the people around them. Look at their parents, look at their siblings, look who they married, look at their children. Those are the four things that I always say. Look at those people surrounding your ancestor and make sure it's matching up with what you know about your family tree and what is documented about this person to make that connection to prove that this is it.
And for more detail on where to find these specific records, refer back to episode 14, where we do a deep dive into all of the various places you can find them, fold three, and then other places as well. So, walk people through a little bit more about the application process and give them kind of a little guidance here from somebody that's gone through it.
So the application process can seem like it's overwhelming, but just look at it as one chunk of the puzzle at a time. Get one piece of the puzzle and then work on the next. That's the best way to look at this. So you're going to have to go to the tribal website and print out the application. And so when you print out that application, it's going to ask for details about you and about your family. So you're going to put your name on there, you're going to put your parents on there, your grandparents, great grandparents, whoever it is, up to the person that is enrolled on that document for enrollment purposes, whether it's the baker or the Dawes. There's also a United Quechua band base roll from 1949, but that one isn't really readily available to people. If you have an ancestor on there, the tribe can help you with that. But for Eastern Band and Cherokee Nation, you'll have to put yourself on there up into their enrollment roll for that one person. So let's just say it's your grandmother in this case. You're going to need to have your birth certificate. You're going to need your parents' birth certificate. If they're no longer with us, you'll need their death certificate too. And then since our grandmother was the one that was enrolled in the tribe, we're using her as an example, you'll need her birth certificate if available and her death record. So there's not always a birth certificate available. Usually you'll have those as a birth affidavit in the Dawes packets, and I talked about that in the earlier episode. You can get that from there. You don't necessarily have to have that for the person that is in the Dawes already, who is already enumerated in the Dawes. But me, I'm always like, you never know what they're going to ask for, and they always ask for birth and death records, so I send everything. Once you've got all your documents in there, you've got your application, everything's been sent off. The tribal registration is going to take a look at the paperwork. They're going to verify everything, make sure your family is who you say they are. They're going to look at those documents and make sure they're correct. They're going to send everything over to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to cross-reference and check everything with what they know about the records. Then they're going to send everything back to tribal registration. You're going to be issued 2 cards. You're going to be issued your blue card. You're going to be issued your white card. This is for Cherokee Nation. That is going to say that you are a Native American, that Bureau of Indian Affairs has approved it, and you have been admitted into the tribe Cherokee Nation. On that card, you're going to have your name, your address, all that information, and your Bureau of Indian Affairs card, your blue card, is going to have that same information, your tribe on there, and it's also going to state what your blood quantum is. So some tribes are going to require a blood quantum, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit next because that can be kind of confusing too. So the blood quantum is something that was assigned to your ancestor when they were put on the roll. So the earlier rolls, your ancestors got assigned a fraction of a number of how Native American they were, how Cherokee they were in this case. And that blood quantum followed the generations after that based on that first person, what they believed they were. So the government wanted to track who was Native American by their names, where they lived, and also by their blood quantum. So a simple version of this is, say our grandmother who we're getting enrolled under, she was a full Cherokee person. So she is 4/4. She is written out as full. So each generation, that's going to half. Who knew math was involved in trying to enroll into a Native American tribe? But here we are. So, like I said, each generation that fraction is going to half. So, grandmother's full. My mom would be 2/4, which we're going to simplify into 1/2. So now we're at 1/2 Cherokee for our parent. Me, we're going to say, since my parent is half, I'm going to be 1/4. And then my child, when they're born, they're going to be 1/8. And then they're going to be 1/16 for their children. And the next generation is going to be 1/32. And then it's going to continue on that line. It gets a little complicated when you start adding 2 different parents that were Native American. So then you have to simplify all the fractions all over again. So that's when you get the numbers like 16th, 32nd, or whatever the case may be. So that's when that changes just a little bit. But in general, that is how this blood quantum will work. Not all tribes require that blood quantum. Some require it, others do not. Some just want a roll. Some want other information to be able to say, hey, you are this person. Once you're able to prove your blood quantum, you've looked at your tribal to make sure you fit into those qualifications. You got your application sent in, all the documents are sent in, you've been approved. But what happens if you don't know exactly which tribe you need to belong to? Maybe you think that you're on this record, but maybe you're on that record. So make sure you're looking at all the records and use that geography, like I said. So if you're in North Carolina, you want to use that Eastern Band Cherokee roll, which is the Baker roll. If you're in Oklahoma, you're going to want to use the Dawes roll. even if you're Eastern Band or United Kituwa, even if you're a United Kituwa band-based roll, the 1949, you can still enroll under Cherokee Nation because you're still going to have your family on that Dawes Roll. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull up the next one. So give me 1 second. Pull that up.
While you're doing that, what's typically the range limit for somebody's eligibility? Like for the Cherokee Nation, for example, what fraction could you still attempt this with?
So with Cherokee Nation, there is no blood quantum at all that is required. So you do not have to have a specific blood quantum for the Cherokee Nation. The other two tribes, you do. So let me pull up my screen and we're going to share that next. There we go. So Cherokee Nation, that's the tribe that I'm in. There's no blood quantum. You can
Okay.
enroll as long as you've got an ancestor on that Dawes roll. You can prove yourself to them. You're able to enroll. The United Kituwa Band of Cherokee, they're also in Oklahoma. You have to be able to prove yourself on that base roll of 1949 and also be 1/4 or more blood quantum. So if you looked at that example that I gave, and my grandmother would say she was full, my mom, she was half, I was 1/4. My kids would be 1/8. They would be blood quantum out. They would not
Mhm.
be eligible for enrollment in the United Kituwa Band base roll. However, because both of these tribes go back to the Dawes roll anyway, they can enroll under Cherokee Nation. So technically, I could be a United Kituwa Band Cherokee citizen, and my kids would not be able to, but they could enroll into the Cherokee Nation, still be a part of a tribe, a culture that they should technically belong to also.
Mhm.
That 1/4 blood quantum, the blood quantum frustrates me so much because it basically tells me that the tribe looks at it as people like you're not native enough to be a part of us, even though my grandmother was full and my children are now blood quantum out, so they're ineligible, and it frustrates me to no end. Some people are all for the blood quantum. It's a huge controversy between all tribes. But me personally, I don't like it. I don't agree
Mhm.
with it. If you're Cherokee, you're Cherokee. If you're Native, you're Native. That's it. The
Right.
Eastern Band, Cherokee in North Carolina, you must be a direct ancestor of somebody on that Baker roll, like I had mentioned. And then you also must be 1/16th blood quantum or more, as determined by that roll. So on those rolls, it's going to tell you in that earlier episode on the docs card, it showed what their blood quantums are. So basically the same
Mhm.
thing. It's as determined what was determined at that point in time.
Hmm.
So it's neat to see that the Cherokee tribe, even though they're all basically they're one tribe, everybody was a part of the same tribe back in the day. And when the Indian Forced Removal Act had happened in 1830s, this tribe kind of splintered into three different entities after it settled wherever it was going to settle. And so it's crazy to see how they were once one united tribe, and now here they are, three specific federally recognized tribes with their own set enrollment criteria that is completely different from the other versus which records they use or blood quantums being included or not included. It's just insane to see how different it is, even though they originated from the same exact people. They were one people at one time.
Right. Typically, how long would the application process take? So if just in your anecdotal experience here, like after you sent yours in, how long did it take before it went through all the different processes and you received your enrollment information?
Months. It took
Really?
months.
I thought it might be years.
Several months. No, not that bad, but it took
Okay.
several months. It's
Yeah.
not a bippity boppity boop, send your paper and somebody looks at it and you get that big check mark and you're good to go. No, it takes a lot of time because their research department is going through all of those documents by hand and they're verifying your research, your documents and making sure they're legal documents and they're verifying all of that information. And then once they do that, the Bureau of Indian Affairs is taking a look at those documents too to go ahead and get you get your little check mark of approval here, and then it gets sent back to Oklahoma to tribal registration, and then all of that gets entered into their computer and all that information is saved, and then they send you all your documents and stuff back once they're done with them, and then you usually get your documents first and then you get your cards a couple weeks later. but it's a long process. It's a long process on you as the person trying to enroll, to getting all of that stuff gathered and make sure you have all your T's crossed and all your I's dotted and everything's like you've got everything so there's not an issue. I will say if there is an issue with documents, the tribal registration is really, really good at contacting you and saying, hey, this is what we need.
Hmm.
Um, One other thing that Cherokee Nation will do is in gray areas. Like there are gray areas. Some people don't want to admit that, but there are gray areas in tribal enrollment. Sometimes there's adoptions going on. Sometimes there are NPE issues, not parent expected issues, and there's issues where somebody may not have made it on the Dawes Roll because of various reasons. Most of the ones that I see in my experience is because the people had passed away early on. I have a case where there was a baby that was Native American. She was actually, I think she was Creek. She was tied to a fence post in 1908. The family that took her in were Native American, but they admitted that they had adopted her. They found her and took her in as their own. But she was also Native American. She was also Creek. But because the family wouldn't name who her birth parents were out of protecting the birth parents, and this is all documented in the Dawes Roll, in the packets. It's all documented with the interviews. They said that well, we can't enroll her unless you tell us who her family is. But the family that was Native still took her in and raised her as their own. We ended up doing DNA later on with her granddaughter and was proving exactly who her family was and who tied her to the fence post. We were able to prove that her mom was in fact that of that tribe. So there is a
Wow.
gray area. They can't enroll because they were never on the Dawes Roll, but we have DNA evidence, we have the Dawes packet information, and plus she was adopted into a family who was of that tribe. Like she was raised as this as her culture. Like this is who she is. She knows the language, which is a huge, huge thing. Not everybody knows the language. It's very hard to learn
Right.
that language. I'm still trying.
Yeah.
But there's that gray area. And Cherokee Nation, they understand some of those gray areas. Like there's no wiggle room. You have to have somebody on that Dawes Roll. There's literally no wiggle room. But in cases of
Right.
adoption, there have been some that have been able to be enrolled even though they were adopted. It took a court order. It took DNA testing that was court appointed. So it takes a little bit extra steps. But those gray areas, it is able to be done. It's a lot of work and it's costly, but in the end, in my opinion, it's worth it.
Hmm.
Another example of this gray area, my own brother, like I'm enrolled. My own brother is not enrolled. He can't enroll because his mom had passed away when he was really little. And so his aunt and uncle adopted him. And so that's who's on his birth certificate. So he's
Hmm.
Cherokee. Like he's my brother. Like we
Yeah.
know he's Cherokee. He's me in a male form. It's so weird looking at me, like at myself, and it's my brother. It's crazy how much we
Yeah.
look like. But he can't enroll because his birth certificate has his aunt and uncle on there because they legally adopted him when he became orphaned when his mom passed away. And
Yeah.
so, in order for him to enroll, we have all the documentation, everything's ready to go for him, but he has to be able to go to the judge, establish paternity to get his biological father added to his birth certificate instead of his uncle with that court order, with that DNA test to be able to take all that documentation and send it with the court order and the amended birth certificate to tribal registration for him to enroll. So he's in that gray area. He's Cherokee, but
Yeah.
he can't enroll.
Hmm. Before we conclude, one more question. So, if somebody's ready to start the process, do you think that the best option for them would be to dig into the genealogy first or go straight to like the official tribal website to find exactly what that tribe requires? Or what is that absolute easiest first step that you would recommend?
First step is to know what the tribal requirements are for enrollment because it could be a blood quantum issue of 1/4 or more, which washes out really, really quickly. Within a couple of generations, you are already ineligible to be enrolled. So I always tell people you have to look at your specific tribe's requirements first so you're prepared of what they need. And it's also going to tell you where to look. So if you were, example, you're trying to enroll into the Eastern Band Cherokee and you didn't look at the requirements and you looked at your family tree first, you're not going to know where to look for those records to be able to do the rest of the research that you need. So you're kind of going in blindly if you don't have all of your puzzle pieces in advance to know where to look in your family tree and what you're going to need with your family to confirm things.
Right. Well, thank you so much for giving us some examples here of how one would go about this application process, and I appreciate your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.